is here to talk about the ARRIVE trial. Welcome, ma'am.
Yeah, thank you. From Dr. Uday Thanawala's presence, digital presence, I'm going to something which is equally important, that is reading and knowing about the newer trials that are happening around the world. I'm going to speak to you about a very large trial which had an impact and which has created a difference in practices, especially the cesarean section rates. So this trial is called as the ARRIVE trial. Actually my trial is very big. I request 2-3 minutes extra to complete. So medically non-indicated induction at 39 weeks is the norm today all over the world, and early and late full term, they are obsolete. The thing is optimum term. Uday, if you know from Wadia Hospital, 37 weeks is what we call as term, and then anything beyond 40 or 41 weeks is post term. But now all the terminology has changed. Sorry, I can't use the pointer. How do you use this pointer? Is it this? Anyway, so it is called as the optimum term. So 37 weeks or 36, where a pointer? Slide it change. So it is called as the optimum term. So now the topic, the study I am talking today is about a randomized trial of induction versus expectant management. This study came in the labor induction versus expectant management. Each word is important here is low risk nulliparous women. It was published on August 8, 2018 in the New England Journal of Medicine. Okay, now this study had a large number of participants. So what is the expanded form? It is called as ARRIVE trial, that is a randomized trial of induction versus expectant management. It was designed to test a hypothesis that elective induction of labor at 39 weeks, it would result in lower risk of composite outcome of perinatal death or severe neonatal complication. They started by only thinking about the perinatal death or neonatal complications than expectant management, and they wanted to have only low risk nulliparous women. Now we know that as the gestational age increases beyond 38 weeks, the fetal I cannot use one separate pointer and this. So if you know the fetal risk from 36 or a 37, the optimum term, after that as we go on waiting, as the weeks of gestation keep on increasing, we know the prospective fetal mortality rate also increases. So that is why they said that we will test this hypothesis. And what happens to the neonate even after the baby is born, and the neonatal morbidity, not only the mortality, they studied birth trauma, seizures, intracranial hemorrhage, sepsis, meconium aspiration syndrome, RDS, and as the gestational age increases from 39 onwards to 42, we can see all these morbidity and mortality are also increasing in the babies. So the maternal risk, if you see, risk of operative vaginal delivery, 3rd and 4th degree perineal lacerations, postpartum hemorrhage, febrile morbidity and mortality following meconium, everything increases from 39 weeks to 41 weeks. There is a upward trend. So we know that both the mother and the baby are at increased risk. The cesarean section, though we all feel that anytime we induce a patient, there is a higher chance of the patient undergoing cesarean section. In this trial, they showed that if we keep on waiting from 39 weeks to 40 weeks and 40, this Cheng in 2009 and Garrett, they said the cesarean risks also go on increasing as the gestational age goes on increasing. But we all think that induction of labor increases the risk of cesarean section, isn't it, in non-randomized studies compared to spontaneous labor. So we feel that it is better we allow the patient to let go in spontaneous labor so that these patients can deliver vaginally. So the induction of labor, patients undergoing induction of labor, they should be counseled about twofold increased risk of cesarean section. This is what the ACOG said in 2009. Ever since we have been counseling patients that if we induce you, there is a possibility that you may have an increased chance of going for cesarean section. But that is not true. The ARRIVE trial has quashed this, and the concerns were raised regarding the risk and benefit of elective induction of labor. So the primary outcome of this randomized trial was to answer the question about whether elective induction of labor at 39 weeks was associated with a lower risk of perinatal death and neonatal complications than expectant management. The secondary outcome which was seen in this study was the reduction in the cesarean section rates. So the salient points, what it's a multi-site randomized trial, healthy nulliparous women at term were used, and labor induction or expectant management. These were the two groups that were studied. The first outcome was adverse perinatal outcome, and the second one was the risk of cesarean birth. The trial reported that the primary outcome, a composite of adverse neonatal outcome, was not different between the two groups. So whether you induce patient at 39 weeks or whether you wait and allow them to go into spontaneous labor at 40, 41 and 42 weeks, the neonatal mortality and morbidity is not affected. But the principal secondary outcome, that is a cesarean birth, was significantly more common among women whose pregnancy was expectantly managed than among women whose labor was induced at 39 weeks. And these results have the potential to change the existing practice and our thoughts, our clinical practice. But we think that if we induce a patient at 39 weeks, there is a chance that she may land up with cesarean section. So the New England Journal of Medicine on Twitter, this was a slide that was put, that they said that 3,000 patients they studied labor induction and 3,000 patients they did expectant management. 39 weeks 0 days to 39 weeks 4 days of gestation they induced the patient, and in expectant management they continued expectant management till 40 weeks 5 days. All participants were expected to undergo delivery by 42 weeks and 2 days of projected gestational age. So the criteria was low risk. I am not talking about the high risk patients here. So the patients who enrolled in the study were young patients, low risk, nulliparous women. They had reliable estimate of due date, single lifetime fetus in vertex presentation, and the study recruited women who were planning to give birth in the 41 large hospital that participated in this study. Although the number that they targeted was 22,533 women were eligible for the study, only 27%, that is 6,106, they agreed to participate, which can signal that the study sample may be different from the target population. Then there were a lot of other exclusion criteria, any high risk, any diabetes, anybody with any known high risk, they have been excluded from this study. So here we are going to talk about completely healthy women. So dating was very, very important. We have to be very strict with the dating, and baseline cervical examination scoring system was to derive the modified Bishop score. This is very, very important in both the groups, whether they are inducible or non-inducible, and this is a scoring modified Bishop score was using fetal station, dilatation, cervical length and effacement. The time between induction and delivery was very, very important, they said, in the induction group. That is mechanical ripening they did using a Foley's catheter without saline infusion, and they said that once the Foley's catheter has come out, we have to use oxytocin before considering induction has failed. They felt many times obstetricians, they don't have that much patience. They just immediately start the patient on oxytocin and they say it is a failed labor, and then they proceed to cesarean delivery without any maternal or fetal indication. So they said that mechanical ripening using Foley's catheter is important, and they have to use oxytocin, and no attempt was made to alter or mandate specific clinical management whether they were undergoing labor induction or the spontaneous labor. So the expectant group, if the participant was randomized to expectant management, she was expected to have a follow-up, 1 weekly follow-up visit with her provider, and then to continue pregnancy until at least 40 weeks 5 days. Antepartum fetal testing was expected to be initiated no later than 41 weeks 6 days, and all participants were expected to undergo delivery by 42 weeks 2 days of gestational age, whether they are spontaneous or there are any indication. So they were randomized, and of the 6,106 randomized, 5772 delivered within the research guidelines. Then there were secondary outcomes about the neonate, the birth weight, the duration of respiratory support including ventilator, airway, continuous positive airway pressure, nasal cannula, Keffel hematoma, shoulder dystocia, blood transfusion, hyperbilirubinemia, hypoglycemia, admission to neonatal intensive care unit. All these were studied as the outcome. So the maternal secondary outcomes were cesarean delivery and indication, then incision extension at cesarean delivery, operative delivery, chorioamnionitis, third, fourth degree perineal lacerations, maternal death, admission to ICU, preeclampsia, all these were studied in this particular study. So what was the outcome? The mean gestational age at birth was 4 days shorter, that is 39.3 weeks for the induction group, because they were induced, they delivered little early, and the mean maternal age for the induction group was 24 years. So actually most of our patients, now what patient profile we are getting, I don't know about here, at least in metro cities like Mumbai, 24 years is very difficult to get a primi gravida. Most of them are like 27, 28 or 29. So this particular study is for the 24 years, mean induction for 24 years. The primary outcome is a measurement of adverse perinatal outcome, which is perinatal death or severe neonatal complication, and the difference was not statistically significant. So whether you wait on these patients or you induce them at 39 weeks, the neonatal outcome is not great. Then if you see the ARRIVE trial, what this is how it is. So this is the induction of labor is a yellow one, and the expectant management. So this is the perinatal outcomes. This was a composite result. This is a death and those who are requiring respiratory support. So even waiting on these patients can be a problem, and these babies can have adverse perinatal outcome. Secondary outcome was the rate of cesarean birth, and they had a statistically significant decrease in rate of cesarean section in women who had elective induction versus the elective management. So among the maternal outcome, if you see this is the induction of labor and elective management, the cesarean section was higher in the elective management when compared to the induction of labor, and of course in hypertensive disorders was also higher in the those on whom we waited.